right, our scripture comes from Psalm 78, verses 1 through 8. Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have known, that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from our children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might, and the wonders that he has done. He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach to their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise to tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and that they should not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation whose heart was not steadfast, whose spirit was not faithful in God.
All right, good morning. How are you guys doing? Wow, I see a lot of friends out there. Man, I wasn't nervous before, but now I'm going to run away. Wow. Thanks for being here today. Welcome. Let me just say, if this is your home, then welcome home. And if you are searching for a church home, then let me say welcome to your new home. I had nightmares all night that I'd lost some of these notes, Bill. I want you to know that I had about 3 or 4 revisions of this thing. Because last week, I went to bed Saturday night, and I just had this stirring, like, I wish today was the 29th, because I'm ready to get up here on the stage and start preaching. And then I sat down in my favorite chair over there that I give people the eye if they sit on it. And I sat there, and then Phil starts preaching, and I just kind of put my head down and I went, oh, man, you're not ready. You're not ready, Thomas. You better get. And you know what? You guys are lucky because my second revision was in Spanish. And I don't know if that would have worked out for you guys. So we are having our VBS. Yeah, July 15th through the 18th, to the 19th. Sorry about that. Yeah. And listen, man, we are expecting almost kids to be here. Yep. And 70% of those kids don't have a church home. 70% of those kids only come to church during VBS. So I want to challenge you guys today. We still need a few volunteers, and you know what? I see them in this room. Yeah. So we're lucky, right? So outside these doors, there are going to be some volunteers wearing our VBS shirts. Just go up to them, and you can register to participate or register to volunteer. The Bible says that the harvest is plentiful, and we are to pray about the workers. So I pray that if you've got some time, even if you only one day, that you will sign up to serve in our VBS. I am one of those rare humans that got to grow up with 2 parents. My parents were hardworking and taught my sisters and I that being hardworking was a good quality to have. They also taught me that giving up was something that I was never, ever to do. Even during the toughest times, when relatives stole from us, when businesses cheated us, when people that we trusted led us into traps. One time, a guy sold us a house and we moved in, and a day later we found out the house had been condemned and we had to move right back out. But the whole time these things were going on, my parents never quit. They put one foot in front of the other, and they kept right on going. I remember when, after about a year of being called into ministry, I finally decided, you know what? I think I can do this, you know. I think that I want to give my life to surrender to ministry. And I stood in front of the church that I was at the time, and I told everybody that that's what I wanted to do. And then I started putting my resumes out there, and people would call me, and they'd say, man, you have no experience. We can't hire you. And finally, a church asked me to be a and I'm like, yeah, man, whatever. And I ended up washing bottles and making water balloons and cleaning and vacuuming and all that stuff. But I never, ever gave up. Even when people would laugh and say, you're going to be in the ministry, man, you're already too old. Didn't give up. Back when I was a kid, and some of you guys will remember this, we used to exchange gifts at Christmas. Do y'all remember that? And it was really important that if you were going to exchange gifts, you had to bring a gift, right? Because if not, somebody that brought one was going to go home without one. And so as I was getting ready, my mom walked into my room, and it was that day that we had to bring the gifts. And she said, don't forget, your present is on the kitchen. And she was kind of annoyed because she had bought it last minute, because I told her about it last minute. And when I got to school, I remember I walked through the front door, and I thought, man, I forgot my Christmas present. And so I told the principal, and the principal panicked, and then he called my mom, and my mom walked all the way to school because she didn't have a car with that Christmas present. I had made a big mistake, but my mom made it right. When I was a little kid, my dad is a carpenter. And when I was a little kid, I used to go to work with my dad during the summer. So I would spend the whole summer with him. And it wasn't till about, I don't know, I guess I was about 16 or so. My mom admitted to me that she made my dad take me. I mean, I thought I was a good kid, right? But one day, me and him were driving down the highway, and all of a sudden the truck started making these weird noises, and we pulled over the side of the road. And I remember I got out of the truck. He made me get off on the driver's side, and we got off in these cars. This is in the 70s. The cars are going by like 75 miles an hour, and we lifted up the hood, and we couldn't see what was wrong, and we just started walking. And I was having the time of my life. I was so excited, the danger, the sounds, you know, picking stuff up off the ground that looked really cool to keep. And this whole time, I never realized until later that my father was probably really afraid. Probably thought, what are we going to do now? We don't have the money to fix the truck. We didn't even have a phone at home, so I have no idea who we even called. And it just amazes me how much my dad smiled that day. I remember somebody recently came into my office, and they sat down and they said, Thomas, why are you always smiling? We always see you so happy. And it's because of those times right there when I've seen people force themselves to be happy for the sake of others. One night, when I was 13, you'll probably look at me different after I tell you this story. When I was 13, I remember crazy reason I said something to my mom and dad that really hurt them. I was sitting on my bed listening to the radio, and my dad came in and he sat down on the bed and he goes, "What are you listening to?" And I must have just lost my mind because I said, "Dad, you never spent any time with me." And by then my mom had walked in, and my dad said, What are you saying? We spent almost every summer together. And I said, "Yeah, Dad, but that's work, man. You never took me hunting or fishing. We never went camping. We never played baseball." And I remember my mom was trying to defend my dad, but I was just like a stubborn mule. I wasn't going to. And finally, they got up and walked out the door. And what hurts me now, even to this day, is that I hurt two people that worked their fingers to the bone to make sure that me and my sisters had everything we possibly could have needed. And whenever I tell this story to friends, they always say, yeah, man, but you were just a kid. You were 13. 13-year-olds do things like that. And I understand that. But I had forgotten their goodness. I had forgotten the years and years and years of sacrifice, of going without, of saving the last bite. I had forgotten the goodness of my parents. In Psalm 78, the psalmist is singing about God's goodness, and he is singing about how we forget about God's goodness. He is singing about how the Israelites forgot about what God has done for his people. And it says 1-4, listen, O my people, to my instructions. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which you have heard and known, and your fathers have told us. We will not conceal them from their children, but the generation to come, the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wondrous works that he has done. The psalmist is saying in his song that his song has a deep meaning. But this warning was not new to them, and it is not new to us. They heard these words before, and we have heard these words before. While the Israelites were in the desert, those miracles God performed were forgotten and replaced by their own selfish needs. When you are living to please yourself, any inconvenience is going to seem like a punishment. The desert was too inhospitable. Their backs still ached. The weather seemed against them, and everything that they touched, poked, bit, or stung. Every day was a fight for survival. In verses 9-12, it says, the men of Ephraim, though armed with bows, turned back on the day of battle. They did not keep God's covenant, and they refused to live by his law. They forgot what he had done. He did miracles in the sight of their ancestors. In other words, he did miracles in front of their children, and their children told their children, and their children told their children in the land of Egypt, in the region. God's people, even though they were armed with the latest and greatest weapons, ran away from battle because they had forgotten that God was on their side. The easiest way to forget God's power is to believe that your power is greater than his. As Moses was on the mountaintop meeting with God, the people that he had just saved were creating idols of gold to worship. As they traveled through the wilderness, they complained about the availability of food. Why has God saved us only to let us die of hunger? And God opened up the heavens and bread fell from the sky, but they forgot. When they became thirsty, they cried out to God, why did you save us only to let us die of thirst? And God opened up the rocks and water poured out like the water from the ocean. But they forgot. Imagine seeing the waters of the Red Sea part before your eyes. Imagine seeing a cloud lead you through the desert during the day, and at night a fire, then forgetting the goodness of God. And we read this psalm and we think to ourselves, man, I would never be like that. I will never forget. But then there's Thomas driving down the highway, and my car is about to run out of gas, and I'm saying, Lord, let me. next gas station. I promise I go to church every day. And then I forget. Or when my children are sick and they've got 102 fever and my wife and I are panicked and we're calling all kinds of people, and I get on my knees finally after we exhaust everything, and I say, God, please help them. And then when they get better, I forget about God. Someone out here this morning is sitting in their seats, feeling like the sin of the world is around their necks. Your failures are ever before you. Sin has enslaved you, and maybe, just maybe, you think you deserve it. You look around here and you fit in around all these perfect people. But welcome to a room full of sinners. Welcome to a building made for sinners. In front of you is a liar, a hypocrite, a doubter. As Paul the apostle says, the chief sinner. When we forget God's goodness, we begin to take credit for the goodness in our lives. When we forget God's goodness, we stop seeing the good, the God in everything. Our lives begin to be about us. We become lonely, overworked, and overbooked, stressed, and settle very easy into our lives. What we should do is every day make time to be thankful, even for the things that you've forgotten. Even if you have to set your alarm on your phone to go off at a certain time, and when it goes off, you just get on your knees and you just say, thank you, thank you, thank you. We live in a world that works very hard to put God in a box. We live in a world that moves 100 miles an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so fast that forgetting is very easy. When I first saw the towers in New York fall, I remember sitting down, looking at the television, going, I will never forget this day. But as time passed, I forgot. When that shooting at Columbine happened, I remember I was so shocked that I told myself, this will never pass. But as time passed, it went away and I forgot. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, God tells the Israelites to write down his commands and put them on the doorposts of their houses, on their foreheads, on their hands. He says, tell your children about me. Talk about me constantly. Why would he ask for this? It's because we forget. As the days pass, life less about God and more about ourselves. Most of us here will remember that day that your children don't want to hold hands with you. I know my son is out there going, man, you better not be talking about me, because I'll come up there and throw you off the stage. But we remember that moment when we're at Target and we reach out and the kids put their hands in and they go, oh, no, I'm too old for that. That's a sad, troubling time for a mom and dad. But you, as the children of God, never let go of God's hand. Never, ever forget that he is with you always and his power is absolute. Thank you very much.